Hello and welcome to the final Growth Tech Summit of 2025, Harnessing Wealth Tech Trends to Drive Advisor Success. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Shannon Rosic, Director of Content Solutions here at Informa, and I will be your host for today. And very shortly, we will dive into our exciting agenda, but I'm just going to cover some quick housekeeping items to ensure that you all have the best possible experience today. To enhance your viewing and listening experience, you can actually customize your webcast interface by moving your windows by dragging on the title bar or resize them by clicking on the lower right corner. And at the bottom of your screen, you will find multiple application widgets, and clicking on these icons allows you to open and close the widgets. And don't worry, it will not kick you out of the event, so feel free to click around. For those of you that are looking for CE credit, this webinar has been accepted for 1.5 CE credit hours towards the AEP designation program, and Investments in Wealth Institute has accepted this program for 1.5 CE credits towards CIMA, CPWA, CIMC, and RMA certifications, and all the instructions that you need for credit submittal are available in that resource list widget. As always, we encourage you to submit questions at any time during the summit. Simply type your questions into the Q&A window on the left-hand side of your screen and hit that submit button, and we will address as many as possible throughout the conversations. And the panelists have graciously agreed to follow up post-event should we not be able to get to them live today. And if you're like me and you're into emojis, we invite you to share your reactions by clicking on the reactions widget located on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You can react to slides, commentary, anything like that. We certainly appreciate the interactions. And that just please be aware that today's session is being recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing after the event, and you can access the recording using the same URL that you're using today. So, like I said, let's get to the good stuff because I want to get to the panels. Let's talk agenda real quickly. Unlike our traditional webinars, the Growth Tech Summit features 3 dynamic 30-minute panels, each designed to provide actionable insights into leveraging technology for business growth. And shortly here, Davis Janowski will be moderating the impact of AI on organic growth. We'll follow that with the human-AI partnership, reimagining client service for the digital age. And to round it all out, we have technology's role in the future of alternative investing. And just a huge thank you to our sponsors, PractifyWealth.com, Cirrus Insight, DocuPace, and AssetMark for making today's summit even possible. So with all that, I've done enough talking for now. You'll see me back here in a little bit. But let's kick off this Growth Tech Summit with our first panel. Davis, I'm going to pass it over to you to take it away.
All right. Thanks, Shannon. I'm joined by Jen Mislowitz of Practify and Sarah Blanford of Wealth.com. Hello, guys. How are you guys doing today?
Fantastic. How are you?
Excellent. I hope I didn't butcher your name too much there, Jen.
You got it. Spot on.
All right. I've been covering on and off the organic growth problem for about 2 decades now when it comes to advisor technology. And it's interesting how just in these last 2 years that AI has really ended up being an efficiency builder for a lot of advisors. 2 great examples that I've been covering a lot this last 2 years are the proliferation now of the AI note takers, as they're generally called. There are almost too many of them, but we won't go there. But they are really, in a way, revolutionizing the day-to-day operations of advisors from a meetings and meeting prep and review and correspondence. Some of them work slightly differently from one another, but that is one way where advisors are going to be able to kind of step away from their day-to-day manual processes and focus on growth more. And then also directly with growth, I have seen almost a complete sea change with prospecting. There are a handful, maybe a half dozen applications out there now, dedicated and AI driven, that are able to tap into just a huge number of data sets that before would have required a lot of manual digging. And it's just a tremendous efficiency gain there, and providing a lot more for especially smaller firms to do prospecting in a way it took a biz development team in years past. So I wanted to hand off to you guys. And Jen, maybe we'll go to you first here and see, how is Wealth.com? What is sort of the low-hanging fruit for you guys in terms of how AI is helping your advisors, both in organic growth, but also in terms of efficiency?
Yeah, for sure. I think what I see and what my strongest belief is right now is that relationships are really the most valuable asset that any advisory firm has today. I think where I've seen the industry just change, and especially obviously with AI, is in the past, technology that was supposed to enable advisors to have better relationships really was actually limiting that. I was just reading a stat that said, 60% of advisors say that they're spending more than 30% of their time on manual data entry, admin tasks, right? And that's limiting client-facing time activities. That's limiting the revenue-generating activities because you're spending more time doing those things that technology was supposed to be doing for you. I think AI, like you said, is definitely changing that. The note takers, you hit that spot on. There's too many that I can't even count all of them at this point.
Yeah, hard to keep track.
But I think what we're doing on our end is we're trying to really think about AI not from a point solution solving a very specific efficiency problem. We're really thinking about it, how it fits into your natural day-to-day, your existing work. So not reworking the entire tech stack, but instead re-examining, for us, the CRM, like with an AI first mentality, where people already are, where advisors are already spending their day. Because growth comes from allowing advisors to do more of what matters, right? Time is so important. So if we're getting that 30% of the day back, that's great. They can get to their kids' soccer practice. They can see more clients that can help with growth. But I think where AI really comes is not just the efficiency game. I think that's where I see too many of just point solutions trying to solve that. It's how do we enhance the relationship? So I think for us, when I think of CRM and the CRM journey in the wealth tech landscape, a lot of people think of it as a contact record management system. And we're really trying to think of it, or what it should be, is the client relationship management system. And how do we help the advisor have a better relationship with their clients? So we are launching Practify Intelligence as our AI suite, but it's natively embedded into the CRM experience. So if I put myself back when I was an advisor knocking on doors in 2008, which was a great time to do that. But if you think about how a meeting goes today and how you develop those relationships and how that all works, is with Practify Intelligence, how you do it is you are going to get that meeting prep. And that can take a long time now. If you're sifting through CRM notes, you're looking at performance, all the things you need to prep for that meeting. Being able to use natural language to quickly prep for that meeting obviously allows you to be able to have more meetings. You're spending less time prepping for it. But for me, where it really is a game changer is not about just saving the time, but it's about what we can prep for that meeting. So I think about if you told me, a year ago, maybe we've had multiple meetings since then, that you were planning a family reunion in France. I kind of forgot about that. That might not be something that I look at when I'm prepping for this meeting. I'm pulling the last statements, all of those things. But with AI, it can give those relationship tidbits so that when you come in for that meeting, yes, I get to business, but I'm able to build the relationship as well and mention that today a lot of people might forget, or it's just buried somewhere, or it never even made it in the CRM. So it's just being able to get those types of information from the data that we have about the client. Obviously, we'll have a native note taker that we talked about as well. So that's in the meeting. So you can be more present, build that trust as you're having that meeting. But then post that meeting, everything native within the CRM, but being able to give the insights into the next action. So today, how a lot of CRMs work is, if you're running to the next meeting, you're trying to scramble, put your tasks in, send an email to an assistant to get that done. With the AI taking care of all of that, it's going to kick off workflows within our system. Those are the things that advisors don't want to do. So they'll do the bare minimum to get the move money done, but they're not going to remember to put a task in to follow up after that vacation. And so it's those little things that I think give that white glove service that is the most important thing in this industry right now. How we're able to do more with less, but it's really build those relationships. And I think just embedding AI into that client journey, into the CRM to give those insights is really where we're seeing a lot of how that advisor-client relationship can be. And I think too, even just to take it a step further, it's not just about the advisor in the meeting. I think that gets missed a little bit. It's maybe we have a new assistant in the office. How is she going to know the client what they like to drink or what their granddaughter's name are? Like, there's so many things that are hard from a knowledge transfer, succession planning, that if you're able to use natural language and you know what client is coming in and tell me their dog's name, I just heard one,
Yes.
tell me what they like to drink, those things that are just impossible. It's a needle in a haystack trying to find today with the data. So that's really how we're using AI, because we have the data. We are that core system. It's how do we get those insights and then turn that into action? Because I do think AI can give you a lot of insights. So then what do you do with it? It's kind of where we're seeing things go.
Absolutely. All right, Sarah, and you at wealth.com and some of your competitors are trying to solve very different, well, a very, CRM has been around for as long as I've been covering advisor tech. Didn't have to sort of invent a new wheel like you have with estate planning. How, I'm curious, and I have had some conversations with our colleague of mine and a few of the competitors. I know a few ways in which AI is really allowing estate planning to become much more automated, but specifically with wealth.com, maybe you can illustrate for us some of those ways that advisors, and maybe start from a level where advisors who have not experienced estate planning can relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Davis, to be here, and really excited to share more around how advisors are using wealth.com's technology to really leverage the AI capabilities to transform the client experience. And Jen, just kind of piggybacking off of what you said, I like the idea of really bringing together, marrying the idea of efficiency and the client experience. I think that's really the heart and essence of some of our AI capabilities in the wealth.com ecosystem. So for those of you who aren't familiar with wealth.com, we're the industry's leading estate planning solution. So really focus on the estate planning pillar for the advisor experience. And historically, it's been traditionally, it's been a very, I would say, like archaic model where there wasn't a lot of technology that existed. You referred out to an attorney, you'd get those documents back. I talk to advisors every single day. A lot of times clients come back to them with documents. They have no idea what's even in the documents. They have no idea the implication of those documents. And so with wealth.com, we've not only digitalized and streamlined the document creation piece of the creating those actual legal documents, which, let me be clear, we're talking about AI. There's no AI in the document creation process. That's very rules-based, logic-based. But when you think about the extraction tool that exists within the wealth.com ecosystem, we absolutely harness the power of AI and the AI capabilities. And it is remarkable to see not only the efficiency in reviewing existing documents, reviewing documents that attorneys drafted 10, 15, 20 years ago. You think about right now that traditional experience. Right now, a client sets up those documents and the advisor and the client kind of high five each other. We did it. You set up those documents, but years go by until those documents are reviewed. And a lot of times when the advisor does review those documents, they find that they're from 3 states over. The client's had 2 children since then. There's been a death in the family, and these documents are out of date. And the reason why advisors historically haven't been able to review this at scale for hundreds of clients is because it takes hours to sift through those legal documents and really understand the legal implication. So we have an AI extraction tool, Esther. It's remarkable. I'm actually going to kind of show you maybe some of the cute, cool features that exist within the system. But what the AI tool does, Esther, it allows you to upload documents drafted off platform. So documents you got from the attorney, you can upload it to our tool. What used to take hours to read through, we time even our internal legal team, like put together a 1-page summary. How long does that take to read through a 50-page legal document and create an executive summary? It takes hours to get through all the information, the disposition details, what happens upon first death, what happens upon second death. With our AI tool, it takes less than 90 seconds to get an executive summary. Now, the other thing with this is having confidence in the output, really having a high degree of confidence that this information is accurate. So with the wealth.com tool, we actually link it back to the original document. So you not only can source where this information is being pulled from, but you can also really navigate through a 100-page document within seconds. So I'm gonna just quickly share my screen here, just kind of bring this process to life for you quickly, because I think it's really cool. I'm going to pull up a trust document. This document has 2 amendments, and then you'll see as I scroll through here, here's the actual legal document. I have not the worst eyes, but certainly not the best eyes. I have a hard time even reading this with my own eyes here on the left. So I uploaded this document in less than 90 seconds. I get this executive summary that I was sharing with you. You can see all of those disposition details. If I want to confirm this within the actual document, I can hit these hyperlinks. It'll take you back to that area of the document where this information is being pulled from. I also love to here, just to kind of show you the logic. You'll see successor trust is, you'll see this trust company listed here, but there's in the amendment details, we summarize in the original trust, you'll see the spouse was listed. In the first amendment, the spouse was replaced by a different trust company. And then the second amendment replaced that trust company with another trust company, which is why that trust company is listed here, right? So you can follow the logic. You can easily understand the disposition details. The other thing that I really love about this is being able to query this document that wasn't even a readable PDF. So if I go into the Esther Q&A feature, I can ask a question like, is this a grantor trust, or are there any age-based distribution controls within this document? We show the response for 4 different models. So again, you can have a high degree of confidence. I also heard an advisor share with me that, if these 4 large language models are giving 4 different responses, that leads you to believe that there's ambiguity in the language, in the drafting language, which may be a reason why you may want to update this. What I also love about this is, again, this would take hours to sift through and really understand whether this and what it is you're trying to confirm within the document. We hyperlink this information as well, again, so you can confirm this within the actual document itself. The other thing that I love about this, you just think about, not only if the efficiency, but thinking about that client experience. We provide insights and observations. Insights and observations are exactly what it sounds like. It's insights on the documents, reasons why you may want to consider reevaluating or updating these documents. We'll look for things like unexecuted amendments, for example. You'll see here assets are going outright to beneficiaries. You may want to consider putting them in trust to protect from creditors or future divorce. So you think about that client experience. You're now providing areas of consideration, adding a ton of value and reasons why they may want to work with you. I've also heard advisors use this now use estate planning more proactively in prospecting conversations. So from a prospecting conversation, think about this. You now ask your prospect, do you have an estate plan? In that initial meeting, they say yes, but I don't know what's in it. I created this 15, 20 years ago. You can now offer to review it. I've even heard advisors who will pull up this tool live and just share with them some of these insights and considerations within 5 minutes and it takes roughly 5 minutes in that meeting to kind of go through this process with them, different ways you can think about that. But it puts you in a position to add a ton of efficiency in terms of the amount of time it takes to review, but it also allows you to really improve that overall interaction with that client. Now, the other thing that I love when you think about the client experience is most people, when you go back to this executive summary, this is great, the legal document, it's great, you need to have it, but thinking about putting this in a format that's a little bit more client friendly, we instantly take this legal document, we provide an executive summary, we also provide it in a visual format. So thinking about the output to the client, you can share that executive summary, but you can also put it into a visual format. There's what we call a snapshot report, which basically just conceptually shows all the disposition details, what happens upon first death, what happens upon second death. But if you actually want to show the subtrust details and you want to show the ultimate beneficiaries, we have further visualization tools. Again, this is all instantaneous. So this used to take hours. Now within a few clicks of a button, you can get, for example, a disposition chart showing what happens upon first death, what are the subtrusts, and then who are the ultimate beneficiaries. You can see here on the right as well. There's additional details. All of this information is getting into the wealth.com ecosystem, not through manual entry, which is traditionally that process. It's all this information is being entered into the wealth.com ecosystem via that AI extraction process. So you're not only providing a ton of efficiency and scale for the advisors and your advisory team, but you're also, I think, improving that overall client experience by leveraging these types of technologies.
All right, Sarah, thank you. I want to ask both of you a question now, and we'll let Jen go first with this. With Practify, I know you guys have lots of integrations with other third-party applications and other entities that serve advisors. I'm wondering how AI may be interacting with those. How are you guys sort of boosting the efficiency of advisors with the integrations, and how is that making things more efficient? I'll ask the same of you, Sarah, but then also maybe you could touch on, because as always happens on these, time is flying, but I also wanted to give you guys a chance to talk about what may be on the roadmap or anything else top of mind. So Jen, I'll send it to you next.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think with us, we're on the Salesforce platform, so that opens up a ton in regards to the amount of integrations that we're able to do. So I think the flexibility is really helpful working with the CRM, because if you look at the Kitsy's map, it's growing every day, but being able to, and sometimes that can be difficult, right? But it is good having all that choice, and there is a solution for a lot of very specific things. We work with a lot of firms that have very specific needs and may want these things that from a traditional standpoint don't make sense for a solution to build themselves. And so being able to integrate that in and really create those efficiencies for AI. I see things like the document, looking at the documents and being able to get that information. Prospecting is a big one as well, and marketing, and bringing more of those insights into the CRM to help with that outreach and how you're analyzing certain campaigns and the revenue that it's bringing and how that is driving growth for the overall business, and looking at that in context with everything else is really, I think, the few that I see that are coming more into fruition with AI.
Anything you want to add to in terms of what's on the immediate roadmap that might get advisors excited?
I think just the entire Practify Intelligence suite, we really focused on things from building workflows, which have taken a ton of time in the past, to being able to use natural language. That will be in the product at the end of the month, as well as overall relationship intelligence. So that pre-post meeting, really understanding your client, pulling in insights. And then we're just going to keep iterating on that. That will go from not just looking at an advisor and their clients and how we get those insights to help with growth, but overall across the business, how do we get insights around what clients we should be talking to, trends that we're seeing across all of our clients. Having all the data within our system is something that really helps us building the AI natively within there, instead of trying to integrate AI in. It's really utilizing that database that we have and what we can do. So there's so many exciting things that I think we'll continue to expand upon. But I think having a CRM that is AI enabled, like natively, is going to be a game changer. And we're seeing a lot of traction already of firms wanting to embrace that versus having multiple vendors, multiple relationships, dealing with multiple integrations. So that's the most exciting thing coming very shortly. And then it will be building upon that as well, long-term for our roadmap.
Very good. And I'm dating myself, but when I first started, there was no Kitsy's map. And there were literally about 3 dozen third-party providers. I could literally go to all of them. And
I was gonna remember, like, you would cheer when you got on it. It was like, I worked through, it was like, it's like 4, and you're like, yes, we made it. And then now it's like, I don't even know if I can see us on there. So
I know. I guess it's a good problem for advisors to have. All right, Sarah, the clock is ticking here, but same question for you. Sort of, I know that you guys have a lot of integrations as well, but also what's sort of top of mind in terms of what's on the roadmap coming that's going to have advisors more excited?
Yeah, absolutely. Quickly here, I think for us, we've been historically really focused on the estate planning side. There's a lot of information that exists outside of our ecosystem that's really important and valuable to the overall financial picture. So we do lean on a lot of integrations to get information into our ecosystem. That's super valuable. But I think for us, similar to what Jen said, it's interesting. There's so many parallels of how we think about AI and how you're thinking about it at Practify. But the AI and what I showed you right now, it was kind of in this like siloed experience of extracting information from existing documents. But that AI capability is being built out to exist throughout the entire ecosystem. So thinking about with estate planning, being able to understand trends and themes across entire client bases, right? So being able to apply all natively within the ecosystem, right? All of that information that exists within wealth.com as relates to estate planning, being able to query that information, filter for that information. Think about this from, just changes to estate law changes. There's changes constantly happening, both at the federal level and at the state level. Being able to gain insights on your entire book of business, who's impacted by this, who's on the margin, right? You're gonna be able to apply that AI power across the entire ecosystem. I think for us too, we think about, there's so many great technologies out there and there's ways to get a lot of that information into the ecosystem. And we're thinking about, again, how can we use these other tools to improve the wealth.com experience for advisors and their clients. So there's some really cool things on the roadmap as relates to just even some like note-taking capabilities and how to get that information into the ecosystem so that all that client data and information is ingested into the wealth.com platform, so you don't have to manually enter in that information. So some really big announcements happening for wealth.com at the beginning of next year as it relates to partnerships, integrations, and what that means for the advisors and the client experience. So I know I'm being a little vague here because I can't share too much, but we're absolutely investing into it. It's something that I'm really excited about. I think every advisor I talk to is using these tools in some form or fashion. And ultimately, I think that's just going to mean that information will be, your client doesn't have to manually enter it. The advisor doesn't have to manually enter it into the system. You're going to be able to harness that AI capability across entire books of business within the ecosystem. So it's going to be really exciting.
Well, I'm going to leave just a couple moments for a few last thoughts. I guess one thought that I have, and I get asked a lot by advisors, is when it comes to aspects of security, and also when it comes to this notion of hallucinations within AI, I'm wondering, and we'll start with you, Jen. We'll put you on the hot seat here. Are there areas where advisors need to be concerned about hallucinations still, or is that something of the past?
I think with AI, there's always things that you need to be on your toes about. I don't think that will ever go away. I mean, I think for us, it's about also, it's not just about the like meetings and the things like that. I think because we're using structured and unstructured data within what we're using for AI, and like that's already from our platform that is secured, it's more about taking that and getting insights from the data that already exists. For us, it's not as big of a concern. I think with this industry in general, though, we always need to make sure we're being compliant and double checking the things. So even if AI is recommending actions and tasks and things, we still need to, as a human, make sure that is exactly what should be happening and having those recommendations and those conversations. But it's not as big of a concern for us, just how we're building the AI and how we're using it within the platform.
Got it. And just a quick reminder, you had some slides. I don't know if you want to flash them through, and I'll throw this back to Sarah here for some final thoughts, either on those two things or anything else you want to bring up.
Yeah, I think, oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, really, the slide was to book a demo. So if anyone wants to use the QR code there, then we can share all the roadmap, show all the bells and whistles, and walk through the AI features, but also just our native features as well.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, back to you, Sarah.
Yeah, just quickly add to that. I think for us, and there's a ton of really interesting articles right now, blog posts on the limitations of using AI, both for medical and legal advice, right? So with estate planning, there are limitations on that. And that's why we don't use AI in the document creation process. Like I said, it's very rules-based, logic-based. And for us, that's why I think sourcing, where this information is being pulled from, so you can confirm the logic that's being used to provide executive summaries, to provide insights and considerations. I think, AI gets you the way AI gets you to the 1 yard line, but that's why we all still have jobs too, for one reason or the other, right? It's not going to means, and I think double checking and just being able, hopefully too, you can quickly double check. And that's what we try to do within that ecosystem here at wealth.com, is like we hyperlink that information. So false positives probably aren't going to go away anytime in our lifetime. Hopefully they get fewer and fewer, but I think having the right processes in place and right tools that allow you to double check and confirm that work can just give you more confidence in the extraction and the AI capabilities.
Well, that's great. Well, guys, I want to thank you very much for your time today. I hope everybody got a lot of information out of that. Again, it goes very, very quickly in this format, but I really appreciate the time and you guys sharing your expertise. Shannon, I'm going to hand it back to you now.
All right. Well, thank you, Davis, Sarah, and Jen. Obviously, we can never have enough AI content right now. So I'm going to roll right into this next panel because we're going to get into a topic that really every advisory firm is thinking about right now. And that's all about how AI is reshaping client service. And look, we've all heard the buzzwords like automation and agents and co-pilots, but honestly, here's the truth. The real magic isn't in replacing advisors, not what AI is intended to do. It's actually in freeing them up. And I know you've all probably heard this before, but it's really to free advisors up from spreadsheets and those manual notes and those repetitive admin tasks and work so they can really focus on what matters most and really put the client at the center of everything. And it's all about those relationships because it's still very much a human-based business. So I am thrilled about my panel today because joining me to unpack all of this, the human AI partnership from both sides of the house, are two pros who really just live this every day. So we have Louis Retief, who is the CEO and co-founder of Hubly, and we have Phil Dixon, the CEO of Cirrus Insight. And both, again, sit on both the front and back office. So we're going to get into it a little bit today. So gentlemen, welcome. I want to just give you both the chance to say hello. And Louis, we can start with you. I would just love to give some background on Hubly and kind of where you guys sit in the ecosystem. And then Phil, I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome. Shannon, thanks for having me here. Thanks for the introduction and nice to meet everyone on the call. As Shannon mentioned, my name is Louis. I co-founded Hubly in 2019. Hubly is the market-leading workflow automation tool for financial advisors. We work with the fastest growing advisory firms on the market. The average firm using Hubly is growing about 33% faster than the average RIA firm. And so we're really working with firms that are passionate about workflows, automation, scalability of their client service, and are looking for a workflow and automation platform that allows them to do that. And Hubly is that. If anyone has, now to give a really simple introduction to Hubly, if anyone has seen advertisements for tools like Trello or Asana or ClickUp or Monday.com, there are lots of those tools on the market. Hubly is similar to those, but purpose-built for financial advisory firms and their back office teams, and we are on steroids. So excited to be here.
Love that, on steroids. Thanks for that, Louis. And Phil, over to you. Talk a little bit about Cirrus Insight.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Great to be here, and good to see you again, Louis. I'm the CEO of Cirrus Insight. I've been in tech for about 20 years, married to a financial advisor for about 20 years as well. And her firm is actually a customer of Cirrus Insight. About 33% of our customers are in wealth management, but we're across industries. #1 rated app on the Salesforce App Exchange. And really, we sit in front of the CRM. Our focus is automating all the things that are related to client-customer communications via your email and calendar, mainly. So we automate everything that you can think about related to emails and meetings, whether it's getting communications out, scheduling a meeting, recording a meeting, transcribing a meeting, sequencing emails, go down the list, buyer signals, whether people are opening your emails, clicking on links, etc. So very happy to be here, and thank you, Shannon.
Well, no fair. You're married to the game already. So you have an inside look under the hood.
When I'm doing product management, I mean, the first thing I do is, hey, would you use this? What do you think? So for sure.
I love talk about the ultimate human in the loop, which we'll get to in a little bit.
That's right.
That's fantastic. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to put you both in the hot seat to really just kind of level set and set the tone here for this conversation. And let's see if you're up for the challenge here. Louis, I'll start with you. In one sentence, how do you think AI is changing the advisor-client service model today?
It's the only thing people are talking about.
Love it. Love it. All right. Set the tone. Phil, I'm going to pose the same question for you. One sentence. How is AI changing that advisor-client service model?
Yeah, I think you already hit it, but I'll just say it a different way. And it's just simply AI's job is not here to replace the advisor. It's to release them from administrative work, right? So I think we're going to get into that quite a bit.
Yes. Absolutely.
Shannon, if I may edit my one sentence, is because that was a large part jokingly, is I think what I'm the most excited about is that I think advisors and their teams have been relatively slow to technology adoption, generally speaking. Like there's a resistance. And I feel like there's new excitement and an energy around technology changes and adoption because of this trend called AI. And so I think that's a good thing in general for these businesses.
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of folks are realizing now that AI isn't necessarily the star of the show, right? It's more of the stage crew, and it really sets the tone so advisors can shine in those human moments, which is ultimately what's most important. So want to talk about where we are now. So let's ground this in reality a little bit, because most firms will admit, maybe sheepishly, that their operations are actually still a mix of manual work, those paper checklists, and yes, those spreadsheets from hell that we can fall into and into purgatory a little bit. So, Louis, I'll start with you. You've said, the majority of REA work is still manual and paper based. So where do you see the biggest inefficiencies, and why is it so hard for firms to standardize something as basic as, onboarding or even money movement?
Yeah, it's just bloody hard, I think, is like what it comes down to. Philosophically speaking, I think it's important to realize that as advisors, you're providing one of the most complex services on planet Earth, right? Like, you're dealing with people's financial livelihoods. And because of that, the nature of work is relatively redundant, mundane, and administrative to actually help people with that very complicated task. We track a lot of task level data at Hubly on like what type of work people are actually doing to deliver these services to their clients. And like a lot of it is like send email, collect PDF, review PDF, download PDF, enter data into this system. Like, there's so much redundant administrative work that's actually done on the back end and in the back office to deliver this service. And unfortunately, a lot of that is to do with because we're working in a very highly regulated sector, and the innovation is just lacking. And so I think as we are seeing improvements in technology and tools like AI, we're finally seeing the opportunity to start automating a lot of that mundane, repetitive administrative work, which is the part that excites me. It's going to improve the scalability and capacity of advisors to serve more people and hopefully increase access to these services.
Sure, because the last thing firms need is the back office juggling 20 versions of the same process, while the advisor assumes that it's magically all handled. That's literally the definition of friction. So I am excited about these things too. But Phil, let's bring it to the front office then, because advisors live in their inbox and CRM, at least hopefully, but the admin work never ends, as we know. So how is Cirrus using AI to tackle those repetitive but essential client-facing tasks?
Yeah, I think the generative AI, the opportunity it presents is taking unstructured data and turning it into structured data, right? And what I mean by that is you can think about a blob of text, right? A document, and then you think about your CRM, right? They have two very, very different requirements from an input perspective, right? I can just talk or dictate or write, and it doesn't have to be any structure at all. But when I go over into my relational database systems, right, my CRM, et cetera, there's a very specific form factor. So, what this opportunity is presenting is this ability to take conversational information, collect it very easily, right, and then convert it into structured data that is reportable, actionable, workflowable, right? So, advisors writing tons of emails, but also having a bunch of conversations and meetings, right? And then they turn around and, often have to write notes. So, this ability to voice to text, to just take documents and process them, take your emails and convert those into structured data, is really where AI is going to be kind of the first stab at kind of collecting your customer history and that conversation data. And then harnessing it and leveraging it downstream from, the very first touch all the way through to the 10th annual client review that you have, like once you've signed them, right? So.
Absolutely.
Phil,
yeah, please go.
Yeah, sorry, Shan. I think Phil nailed like the immediate obvious opportunity, right? Like the workflow without AI that Phil just described is advisor does meeting with client. Let's just use it for a specific example, like opening up a new account. I need a new individual account open. I want to transfer $5 million, and this is this is coming from Schwab to Ultras, just as like an example. What happens today is the advisor takes manual notes on that. Then the advisor retypes all of that in an email to their assistant. And then their assistant retypes all of that same information into their CRM, and then retypes that same information into a PDF that they then need to send to their custodian, right? Like you're rekeying the same set of data 5 times just to finally get the task done. And so, and it's funny how much of our experience on the internet today working with these applications is just manual data rekeying and entry is like what humans mainly do when working with software. And so I love where like by Phil and their team being able to optimize on the front end, you can see the downtail impact of how that changes the back office experience and helping to reduce the mundane data transfer that needs to happen at each step in the process.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just exhausted hearing that process. Sorry, Phil, were you going to jump in?
Oh, he nailed it. Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, I see a world, we don't integrate with Hubly, but I'm thinking about it after doing this panel with Louis, right? Because all of that information is collected in conversation, right? It's like where your accounts with, what benefits do you have, et cetera, so on, right? Like what assets do you have? Mm-hmm. All of that is collected in conversation, and then what products are you buying, and what products are we pushing you into, and when, and all of that information is part of the conversation that needs to be captured downstream. But now it's possible to not have any data entry, right? It's like it can go straight from conversation to structured workflow and systems, and that's kind of where we're focused on that upstream conversational intelligence and converting that into downstream workflows.
Sure, but even bringing it back further to that, since a lot of firms are still kind of in that cautiously optimistic implementation around AI. And Louis, it was actually you that said that firms can't leap from manual chaos to AI-powered efficiency overnight. So let's just level set there. Maybe just what's one step for a firm that's still living in spreadsheets and email threads that they can take to move towards more automation and a better just workflow format.
Shannon, you know this, that I love analogies, and I'll actually steal an analogy that I got from Ariel Minacosa, who runs a consulting firm called Finks Automation, and she described it so beautifully, is that everyone always wants to jump to automation and AI. Now, the automation and AI is the icing on a cake. You can't just eat icing. Like anyone who's tried that, like icing's too sweet, it doesn't taste good. And so you need a really good foundation. And so if I could like philosophically provide an example or analogy, is like focus on building the cake, the layers of the cake. Automation and AI opportunities are going to become really obvious once you have a strong foundation and a good layered cake. Is like where I'd start. And like, I believe strongly that your layered cake is your documented processes, your standardized processes, your workflows, your task by task step, who on the team is responsible for what. And if that is all done manually really well, then it's going to be very obvious which particular tasks or activities you can start automating.
Yeah, so really that first move isn't just turn on AI, it's turn on the structure. And like you said, you need that well-built cake before adding the frosting, but I would be the weirdo standing in the fridge with the frosting and the spoon, but that's a whole other story. But Phil, you've actually been vocal that firms, can't even talk about AI until they're out of those spreadsheets, right? And I love that you brought up this unstructured data concept. So how should advisors reframe the question from where can we use AI to actually determine what's actually broken?
Yeah. First of all, I'd say let's make it an Oreo cake, right? Like get your house in order in the back office. And then second, collect all, like back in the day, it was just a file folder, right? Like you had every single interaction with your client, it was in a single file. Right. And now that we've started pulling some of those things into systems, it's kind of all over the place. So trying to get all of your customer history into one place, your client history into one place. If you do that and you've got your back office in order, now you can really start to harness this. So I wanted to add that. And then your question was, Shannon, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. So it sounds like there needs to be kind of this mindset shift, right? Because a lot of folks are scrambling to say, where can we use AI in our firm? But, you have a very different perspective, and to actually flip it on its head. So kind of walk us through that shift of how they should be saying, well, what's actually broken before just piling on shiny new objects.
Yeah, this is the first time in 20 years of tech where I've just heard like CEOs running around saying, go do AI, right?
What does that even mean?
You got a hammer, find some nails, and it's like great for the tech providers, right? Because the budgets are open, but it's kind of like, well, that's counterintuitive, right? Why? What is the problem that you're trying to solve for? Identify the problem is the first step in optimizing a business process or building a feature in software, right? So what are the problems that you have? First and foremost, identify what they are, and then figure out, like, is it a hammer or is it a wrench? Because you might not need AI, right, for that problem. Louis is in fintech, and he brought up the other day how people were throwing blockchain at everything, and it's just like, well, why? Great, that could work, but why would we do that? So is it the most efficient thing to apply AI for? And the answer might very well be yes, but have you stacked ranked the problems, looked at where your biggest bang for your buck is going to be, and then what is the right technology or solution to apply to that specific problem?
Absolutely. It all comes down to process, because the best tech strategy usually starts with, like you said, where's our pain, not what's the coolest thing that's out on the market right now, just to have it, to say you have it. So I think it's great to level set with that. But I want to talk about the human and AI in practice, and kind of defining that partnership a little bit more. So Phil, I'm going to keep picking on you just for a little bit here. Because even during our prep call, you said that AI in your world plays a supporting role. And I know we alluded to it earlier around the human in the loop, because that is such an important aspect when utilizing newer technologies like this, especially when it comes to client support and client management. So what does human in the loop look like for advisors, and how do you keep tech from really taking over that personal touch in today's digital world?
Yeah, I mean, AI, again, should be freeing people up from administrative, cumbersome work, either that they're doing or wouldn't even fathom doing because they couldn't scale or afford it. And so, like, the way people need to think about human in the loop is AI as an assistant. You're going to, monitor how your assistant does their work, right? You're going to quality control it. You're going to observe it. You're going to, do training and feedback. And so the human in the loop concept is always, there is some review cycle where there's a human in the loop before it moves on to the next step. A review and or an approval process, but it needs to be coupled with, in the industry, we call this observability, which is have the AI explain its reasoning and its logic, and provide its references and sources for how it's making decisions and what it was pulling from to do that reasoning. And so that observability and the human in the loop before we kind of move on to the next step is critical.
Absolutely. Louis, anything you'd like to add there before I hit you with another question?
I might just give some more like practical advice, like, and I will put on, like, if I was going to step in and be the COO or owner of a financial advisory business, this would be my general approach today. Is I think, fortunately, advisory businesses are quite scalable because they have a recurring revenue model called asset under management, right? And generally speaking, assets under management grow over time because of the markets. And so there's a good recurring revenue model to your business. And so because of that, I would be using some of my profits to hire a part-time or full-time either software engineer, or I would be hiring someone that is very technical savvy, like solutions architect type of individual to my team. And I would give them one simple job. I would tell them to sit and shadow me and my entire team, and your job is simply to find out ways to increase our capacity on a day-to-day. Not try to replace us or to take our jobs away, but try to increase our capacity and eliminate as much manual work as we're doing. I think it's silly how many firms shy away from bringing in technical talent into their job, into their firms, and instead just hire more administrative staff. And then your profit margins are never going to increase and scale well that way. And some of the firms that I fortunately have the pleasure of working with are legitimately hiring software engineers onto their team or really technical savvy product people to come and help them do that.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point, because talent is certainly something that always comes up in today's day and age. And I know how we talked about it on our prep call, right? This felt, I should say, a little bit like the robo scare from back in the day. And now all of a sudden AI is going to take our jobs. But I look at it as it's just going to create more opportunities. So I love hearing you say, like, firms just need to shift, their mindset a little bit and hire to lead these initiatives. So while you said it may not be more admin support, is it that tech savvy head of ops? Is it a data person? Is it a software engineer? So I think that's excellent advice. Quick pivot, because we did have a question come in here, because we're going to put you guys in the hot seat a little bit, whoever wants to take this first. But this is actually around regulation and AI. I know this is something that's top of mind for a lot of folks, and it's still a bit of the Wild West out there. And maybe, Louis, I'll start with you then on this, but what are the regulatory risks that each of you have identified, and how are you ultimately addressing them as a firm? So I know when it comes to advisory firms, everyone kind of has their own playbook right now, but from the tech side of things, how are you approaching it to ensure that they and the client advisor are protected when you do implement AI initiatives?
Yeah, I think, sorry, there's some background noise. I think generally speaking, any software partner that you work with should have their SOC 2 in place. A lot of the SOC 2 audit requirements for any software provider cover the string of regulatory risks. And so, your software providers, if they're doing their jobs properly, should cover you for the most part. Now, you have your diligence that you need to do is check in with all of your software partners. Do they have that? A lot of really early stage startups, generally speaking, won't have that, just because it is very costly and difficult to check all of the boxes. That's the gold standard kind of thing that you need to be aware of. Now, more in terms of specific regulatory issues, it totally depends on what situation you are in. And if you're just an independent RIA business owner, you have a lot less restrictions. If you're part of a broker dealer, they might have their set of rules or obligations that you need to follow. And so I think it's very situational, this question. In terms of for us developing AI tooling, there's relatively little risk because we are leveraging, enterprise contracts with providers like GPT or Claude, where the data is very isolated, not publicly available as we develop tooling. Hubly specifically doesn't store a lot of PII. It's very task level, workflow orientated. And so once again, it depends on the platform. For maybe a platform like your financial planning software, there's a lot more PII information in there, and so there's a higher risk, and so it's also once again platform dependent. So consulting answer, it depends.
No, it absolutely does. Again, we're all kind of in this boat right now of how to utilize AI just ethically and authentically. So Phil, from the Cirrus Insight side, what are the regulatory risks that you've maybe identified that you're trying to address as a firm to help your clients?
Yeah, I mean, it's moving fast, right? And again, Cirrus often is working with, enterprise organizations they're very large and have their contracts with Azure or AWS or, a third-party LLM provider. And so it's a little technical, but I'll just kind of, try to get into it and keep it simple. I mean, bring your own LLM and bring your own storage, right? Your IT has set up protocols, right? They have their own back office protocols, procedures, policies. And it's going to be very difficult for vendors that aren't Microsoft and Google to kind of adhere to all the different nuances, and especially as they change quickly. So the way we're building the platform is control plane and data plane. And so we want our customers to be able to bring their own LLM API key, right? Their IT has the contracts, they trust it. And then we want the data potentially to be stored in your infrastructure, not ours. So think of our software as control plane and data plane, right, is your infrastructure. Bring your own. So that's the way we're architecting the system specifically to be as nimble as we possibly can be in these highly regulated and compliance-oriented industries like financial services.
Well, I appreciate you both. Let me put you in the hot seat for that one.
Yeah, good question.
It is inevitable that regulation and compliance comes up when you're talking about AI, because certainly everyone is trying to figure it out right now until really we have more guidance around it. But I know we have just a couple minutes left here, so want to bring this conversation back full circle, really to around just modernizing the front and back office. So would love for you each to kind of just share practical takeaways. Louis, I'll start with you. If firms had to do, one thing in the next 12 months to modernize the back office, what should it be? Where should they start when it comes to the advent of AI?
So I always like this statistic because it blows people's minds. Shannon, maybe you'll guess for me, how many average clicks do you think the average back office worker is doing on a monitor or interface on a day-to-day?
On a day-to-day, oh gosh. Throw out a number of like 130?
1,200. I'm going 1,200.
It's close to 10,000.
The average, so many zeros. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the average back office administrative worker is clicking around an interface on their monitor, clicking a button in the CRM, clicking a button in email, clicking a button in Microsoft Teams or Slack. They're close to 10,000 clicks on a daily basis. And so I think, the practical advice is that's ridiculous, right? We're basically just like monkeys clicking around on buttons all day is what most of us do. And so I think just bringing more intentionality to your team's work, your back office team's work experience around trying to reduce clicks, I think is always such a simple motivation and thing that your whole team can get around. Nobody loves doing that. And then I think there's a lot of, for us at least, practically speaking from an AI development standpoint, product development standpoint, we care deeply about that metric is how much can we reduce clicks and automate? And so I think it's something that firms can take away and talk about themselves and how do they help make that better. But it's also at the same time, it's what we focus a lot on as a product as well.
All right. Well, shout out to the back office folks that are probably suffering from severe carpal tunnel from all of those clicks. AI is going to help you out, coming for you. So hopefully there's some relief in sight to free you up to do some other things. But Phil, similar question for you. What is your advice, particularly when it comes to the front office? If firms had to do one thing in the next year, what should it be? What should they be getting in order to help modernize?
Yeah, absolutely. AI, in the context of AI, but just in general business, right? Context is key. And they hit on it in the first panel about just generally context is going to be crucial to downstream work. So like the back office, getting your policies, procedures, protocols in place, go get your customer history, you need all of your contacts, you need all the email, all the notes, get all of that organized in one place, whether it's paper or digital. And if it's paper, digitize it. And if it's digital, start to think about downstream workflows that could be AI enabled, because now you have this great context. AI is no different than a human, right? It needs instructions and it needs context in order to do a good job. So that would be my first kind of crawl advice for anyone, to just get customer history, client history organized and into one place, so that everything that you do downstream from that can have that rich relationship history.
Absolutely. Well, with just a minute left here, gentlemen, just tell folks quickly where they can learn more about you and what you're working on at your respective firms. Phil, I can start with you.
Yeah, we can go to cirrusinsight.com, and what we're working on is integrating, these AI workflows pre, post, and pre-live and post when you're authoring an email or when you're scheduling or running a meeting or following up from a meeting. We're just adding a lot of AI capabilities around the automation tools that we already have that integrate kind of where you work and are interacting with clients.
Perfect. Louis, take us home. Oh, you still there, Louis?
I was muted talking to myself. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's nice. Well,
I'll quickly, if you're an independent RIA firm or a firm part of a broker dealer and are looking for a way to scale up, make your team more efficient, improve team accountability, you're sick and tired of your CRM, go to Hubly, www.myhubly.com. We have a free trial, or you can book a demo with our team.
Perfect. Well, thank you again, gentlemen. And to really sum this panel up, AI is only as powerful as the process it supports. So if you're still running your firm on spreadsheets, that is your first step right there, as Phil and Louis said. Get digital, get structured, and just get smart with AI. Because as we now know, the future of client service isn't human or AI, it's human and AI working together to make it more accessible, more personal, more scalable. So gentlemen, thank you so much for just a dynamic conversation. Really appreciate it. But it is now time for our final panel, and we appreciate you all sticking with us to round it out and take this all home today for the Growth Tech Summit. I have my colleague, Dave Bodemer, who's going to be talking about technology's role in the future of alternative investing with AssetMark. So, David, at this point, take it away, please.
Great. Thank you so much, Shannon. And I have with me Alex Pape, who is Executive Vice President, Chief Technology and Product Officer with AssetMark. And among other topics, we're going to talk about there's been a lot of discussion of AI. Now we're going to talk about a different kind of AI, which is alternative investing. So we can continue to use the acronym for a new topic, as well as some other. But I think we wanted to, before we get going, do you want to just give us a quick introduction, a little more about yourself and about the firm, and then I'll fire some questions at you.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, great to be here. I suspect we will not be able to help ourselves, and we will for sure talk more about AI, but we'll also talk about all its privates and some other things. So my name is Alex Pape. I'm the Chief Product and Technology Officer at AssetMark. I've been in the industry of wealth and wealth tech, asset tech for my entire career. I joined AssetMark earlier this year after 8 years at BlackRock, building the Aladdin wealth business, the wealth technology business there, and been involved in a number of the early startups in the space over the years prior to that. For those who are unfamiliar, AssetMark is an independent wealth platform serving independent advisors. We help advisors scale, grow, give more holistic advice, and also grow their enterprise value and think through succession. We've been around for over 25 years. We serve north of 12,000 advisors. We're over $150 billion of AUM that we manage on behalf of those advisors for their clients. Very excited to be here.
So I want to start with, given your track record and experience, maybe we could start with like a 30,000 foot view and just get your take on what's the state of wealth tech right now?
I think we're at an interesting moment. I would, as much innovation, and I think great product has come out over the last 5-10 years. I do largely feel like we're still at a moment of unfulfilled promise of tech, particularly for the independent side of the advisor space. There was an explosion of wealth tech 10 to 15 years ago. That was the time when the first robo-advisors came out, the first really, I think, good CRMs tailored for the space came out, Redtail, Riskalyze, now Nitrogen came out, the first rebalancers really focused on the advisor as a user came out. And that explosion in wealth tech, the center of gravity was the independent advisor. For the startups and the businesses, it was a sales channel that was faster to market. You didn't have to go through the burdens of getting through a bank or a broker to get access to your client and your user. And there were a lot of entrepreneurial advisors who were early adopters and started assembling quite good tech stacks of like their favorite best-in-class point solutions. And at the time, like it almost felt like if you were an advisor at a bank, you were sort of looking on with some jealousy. Like you were limited to your bank's tech. At that time, a lot of bank tech was very swivel chair or just less modern. And if you fast forward to today, in a lot of ways, it's almost flipped. Like the banks caught on, like the private banks and the wirehouses caught on. They invested heavily in their platform, different across different ones, but they removed a lot of the swivel chair. They brought on vendors. They built proprietary platforms. They connected a lot of workflows that were separate. And they got their data platforms in order, which is a big deal because that's sort of a prerequisite for AI today. And then meanwhile, for independent advisors, particularly those who are not part of a large aggregator, it really hasn't gotten any easier to integrate all of the tech. And there's actually like more tech now. There's more specialized splintered tools to connect. And there's a lot of burden on the independent advisor, particularly the solo advisor, the small practice, the small ensemble. And it feels like right now there's a trade-off that a lot of them feel that I think is valid of, do I take on this burden and try to connect these many, many tools together and probably either not be super good at that or just take a lot of effort and money on that, or do I just sort of pick an all-in-one platform but recognize that a bunch of the tools there are not going to be best in class because they're the ones that come out of the box. So I think this is like an interesting moment where, like, despite lots of venture capital and money flowing into the wealth tech space and lots of really good products in their lanes, it's actually quite hard, like for an independent advisor to assemble them all together.
So dovetail that into the client piece, and these days clients are asking for a lot of personalization. So how does that kind of fit into that personalization question, and what problems remain to be solved?
Yeah, I think about the wealth tech stack, like at a high level, I think about it having 3 layers. And the layers are organized by, like, what's the center of attention, the object of attention. So I think of the client layer, the portfolio layer, and the transactional layer. And this is a simplified view, but I think it's helpful to think about tech stacks. And so like client layer is like the client is the object of attention. And CRMs sit here. Wherever you're building an investment mandate sits here. Financial planning theoretically should sit here. Then there's the portfolio layer, and this is portfolio construction and model construction and rebalancing and any decisions on the portfolio. And then the transactional layer is all the stuff that probably we mostly don't want to think about on a day-to-day basis, but the order management and the accounting and the billing and the custody. And I think that we've seen quite a lot of good progress in the client and portfolio layers and personalization. Like the CRMs have gotten a lot stronger. We just heard from one of them. Meeting prep and follow-up has gotten a lot better. Next best action at the client level has gotten better. In the portfolio layer, like the hero story has been tax. Like tax personalization, being able to do tax transitions, tax budgets, like that technology has come a long way and is increasingly table stakes. And customization in the portfolio and other dimensions, values, factors, have become very viable to do it at scale today. I think the unsolved problem is that those 2 layers don't really talk to each other. And you can't really deliver true personalization thinking about the client in isolation from the portfolio. Like you need to cross those 2 things. It's sort of the definition of personalization. And so like the way that we think about it is there are 3 systems that have each gotten really quite better in the last few years, but they don't talk to each other that need to. There's the proposal system. There's the sort of model management system, wherever you build model portfolios that you reuse or tweak for clients or shop for models. And then there's the financial planning system. And those 3 don't fit nicely into like the client layer or the portfolio layer. They span the 2. And those 3 also just don't talk to each other today. Like I'm kind of amazed that we sit here. Like 10 years ago, I would have predicted that we'd have really good systems that could build a financial plan and then instantly build an investment proposal that fulfills that plan. Like that connection largely doesn't exist today. And you also can't build a financial plan and use your actual models in the plan. It's usually a generic asset allocation. So like, we're very focused on taking those 3 pieces, which I think is like the crux of where personalized advice comes to, and connecting them.
So on the AI piece of things, just to circle back to that, there's been some talk about how using AI for client meetings, but are there other use cases, other ways that AI can be incorporated into the stack and to address certain processes?
Yeah, I think AI in the CRM for meeting prep and meeting follow-up is, I think, the most mature use case so far. Mature with a, like an asterisk against it, but the most widely adopted, the best toolkits that have been built so far. And that makes sense. Like, I think if I as an advisor, that'd be the very first thing I did if I did anything with AI. I think like the average US advisor spends 25% of their time on administrative tasks. A lot of that is meeting prep and follow-up. There's now a good toolkit for that. So like, that makes sense. It's a slam dunk. I think that value will get absorbed. I think like every advisor will pick those up, some faster than others, some slower, but that's going to become standard. I think after that, I think a lot about what happens after that, and what's the value of AI beyond removing administrative tasks? Like, how do you actually use it to be better, drive revenue, to deepen client relationships? And I think the big untapped value is upgrading the actual content of the conversation between the advisor and the client, not just making it more efficient or making the follow-ups better, but particularly conversations that are investment heavy. Portfolios are getting more personalized. Like we just talked, like they have custom tax overlays. We're going to talk about private markets. Like they have private vehicles in them now. They have different liquidity cycles. So like the definition of the portfolio is expanded to include annuities or insurance in a lot of cases. A lot of portfolio decisions are tied to an estate plan. And then advisors are, as they scale, handling more portfolios, and each portfolio is increasingly personalized. So the problem of like, how does the advisor credibly represent the value of all of that personalization for each portfolio is actually getting harder. That's a hard problem, and that I think of like the conversation between the advisor and the client is the crux of the relationship. It's the crux of like the product of wealth management. And that problem gets exacerbated even further when you think about how many advisors are preparing for or in succession planning, because they're not only having a harder conversation to have, but they're trying to hand off that conversation. They're bringing on a junior advisor and bringing them up, or they're selling a book or part of a book. A new person's going to need to step in and have that conversation the same way that they would have. So I call this the talk tracks problem. Like, what's the talk track for any given portfolio, for any given client, any given moment in time? So we've been very focused on working on that problem. Like I think there's versions of talk tracks for what's a talk track on a portfolio right now? What's a version I'm preparing for a client meeting? If a client calls me tomorrow and at 10 a.m. and asks me like, why did you make this trade yesterday? How do I know the answer to that very quickly? And was it tax motivated or balanced, or did a model change? And this is an AI. It's a great problem for AI because it's a fundamentally natural language problem, but it starts with actually a lot of math before you get to AI, because you have to answer this question well. You have to take a portfolio and do risk analytics on it, and then do a performance and a performance decomp. And then you need to know what news articles have been published recently that would be relevant things to talk about or incorporate into sort of lend language to the statistical math of, well, this performance came from this sector. Why? Which names do I hold, and why did they move? You have to take into account the tax, and if you're invested in a model that's from or inspired by a third party, they have their own commentary about that model. So there's like quite a big orchestration problem of getting all the relevant information in. And then AI is a great tool once you have done that to generate talk tracks. So that's, I think that is like a great area of opportunity for use of AI that's sort of very untouched so far, with everybody focusing on more, removing the administrative side.
Well, I hope some of those news articles are coming from wealthmanagement.com, to help inform that in those talk tracks. Just put a plug for ourselves in there. So pivoting to, we touched on this idea of private markets, and it's obviously there's a lot happening. You can't open, we're writing about it a lot. It's in the financial press. There's a ton of product development in terms of like funds that are coming to market, players that are coming into who have traditionally been targeting institutions coming into the wealth space. So it's just this huge kind of like can of worms that's that's now entered the wealth world. So maybe just to start with, like, you know, the most basic is like, what's the reality on the ground in terms of making, like, what's happening? Like, how are folks actually making this work? What's really happening?
Yeah, I think I'll break it into two questions. Like, one is, are we actually seeing advisors adopt privates? Like, or is there real demand? And the second question is, why is it so hard? And so I think from the demand side, we see the demand every single day. It's like probably the number one thing that we get asked for from the advisors on our platform. And the demand's coming from two different places. One is just an investment side. There's the shrinking number of public equities,
right?
More value creation in privates. There's a stat that I think it's 80% of U.S. companies that have $100 million of revenue or more are private.
Right.
Private credit's capturing more of the fixed income side returns. So there's an investment thesis that's sort of very valid, and it's sort of the 20 years later version of Swenson at Yale building these more heavily private portfolios. The other side is more about the growth of the advisor practices. Like, we have a lot of advisors who are trying to move up market and go into high net worth or the upper end of high net worth clientele. And if you're an independent advisor and you're going after that clientele, guess what? You're competing with a private banker. That's that's your competitor. And the private bankers are here. They have, not always good, but they have private markets on the shelf. They have it connected to their banking products. They have it connected to their lending products. So from a competitive standpoint, it's becoming a necessary part of the toolkit to compete and win business. So those are sort of like the two reasons we keep hearing about it. But yeah, it's incredibly hard. Like, private markets grew up, and the tech that underpins private markets in institutional land. And you think about if you contrast the tech that grew up to underpin wealth with the tech that grew up to underpin privates, it's like oil and vinegar. They're just like designed not to touch to each other. Private wealth tech, or at least good wealth tech, puts the client at the center of everything. It's all about, can I manage this portfolio holistically? Can I have the fewest number of accounts? Can I have a transparent view into everything I'm doing? Like, can I tailor the cash flows to my client's reality, their paycheck in, and when they need cash out? It's all about the client. And for private markets and the tech that underpins them, the private market GP is really the center. Like, that's the center of the world. And it's, okay, well, when are they going to need to be able to draw down cash because they have an asset to go buy? And like, okay, well, we'll have a capital call structure that gives you 48 hours to give you $1 million to go get it. Right. And my ticket sizes are big, so let's have big funds, and let's have 5 to 10 year holding periods. And like, whenever the fund incurs taxes, I guess they must make the investors pay the taxes. So it's all about the fund, and like the LPs, when they were mostly institutions, sort of, that was a fine trade for them, but it's pretty incompatible with the life of a retailer or a wealth client. So I think like what we have been focused on is that complexity is real. It's not going to go away. There's definitely innovation happening on the product side, and interval funds and semi-liquids are interesting for some categories, but that's not going to fully solve the problem. So we've been very focused on just make privates feel like publics from the experience of the advisor and the end client. And like, can we just obscure away, like we'll deal with it. Like, we're really good at middle office operations, really good at trading, we're really good at dealing with GPs. Let's just not expose that. Let's make it easy for advisors to have that below the waterline. So we have a big launch next week. We're introducing a mixed public-private UMA offering. That'll mix interval funds, semi-liquids with publics, but the big deal is like one account. So not a separate account. We'll deal with all the complexity of trading and the redemption windows. And because of like one of those demand drivers I mentioned is really about how do, as an advisor, I go up market and do I compete with the private banker, I think you have to overlay the feature set for a product like this with like, well, what are private banking features? So we're launching it with full custom tax overlay on the whole thing, not just the publics, also the privates. So tax overlay the same you would. And we're also launching it with securities-backed lending on the whole thing. So you can lend against this whole portfolio the same way that if you were at a bank, you could collateralize it for a client's liquidity needs. So I think that's a good and that's a good first step, and one report rather than two different reports. But I think this is the direction of travel. This is if you can keep pushing down this path, I don't think it's like make the complexity go away. It's more just hide it. Like, let
Right.
professional middle office people deal with it, so that the advisor and the client can just think about what's the best portfolio for me. Like, how do I understand? Like, what's the best report that can see for this one account?
I mean, that does feel like a big deal, because I mean, a pain point that I definitely have heard is this idea that, as this trend has emerged and evolved, a pain point being that the private market investment has been kind of like in a different place, and sort of like you needed to have a different ecosystem, and the reporting was different, and like you couldn't view all your investments together. So there's real demand within, I think, coming from advisors that, hey, if you could make this easier by having, one portal that we're looking in, and the publics and the privates are together, or in a UMA, account, like, that's sounds like what you're doing. But just like this, it just feels like that's also been like, when you hear about obstacles to adoption, I feel like that's one that I've heard. So like, so it seems like that's something that's being actively addressed by what
I
you're
think that's spot on. I mean, we sit down with advisors and just shadow them and watch their workflows as just a normal course of what my team does with our clients. And typically today, if an advisor is buying a private asset for a client, it's like a separate account. It might be a separate custodian. They have to turn around and log into a different marketplace. Like, there's no connection. And for a lot of times, it's like, for the first time, the client's going to get a K1, and they might have to delay their tax filing. And like, it becomes just a lot of burden. And candidly, it's also hard to explain the investment rationale concisely. Like, it's there, it's real, but to a client, it's hard to. They see the fact that I have to delay my taxes, and I get this complicated K1, and I have a separate account that I have to go open and provision my advisor on. So that it's just a lot of complexity that, like I said, I think a lot of it's there for good reason, but and it's to enable the GPs to go invest in a way that actually will generate those returns and take the illiquidity premium. But so we don't want to change the product so much that the source of return changes.
Right.
We just get this out of the life of an advisor, out of the life of the client. There's all this stuff needs to be below the waterline.
Right. And not to mention the fact that, like, even like we like to talk about, bucket terms like alternative investments and private markets, but really you're talking about a whole universe of assets, right? You're talking about real estate, private equity, private credit, infrastructure. So it can get very daunting very quickly. So I think that whatever ways you can do to create a private market solution that makes it easier for people to get their head around and understand seems like another necessary way to make this easier for the industry. And
we didn't even talk about just the investment due diligence is considerably more involved. It's evaluating an infrastructure project or fund or a fund of funds. There's a whole level of analysis for each private subclass of asset class. So whether it's private credit, hedge fund, real estate, et cetera, like there's sort of an optimal structure to the fund for that based on its liquidity characteristics. That's a whole complicated set of analysis. We have a due diligence team that's thinking through like, okay, which for a semi-liquid, for a tender fund, for a renewable fund, what are the asset classes that are actually natural fits to that and will work and don't pose like the risk of liquidity issues down the road, and then like what needs to be in a drawdown fund, and like that whole level of analysis needs to be done quite thoughtfully. Yeah, that's super important. So we've got a few minutes left. We could always pivot back to this, but one other just theme that I wanted you to address is what are some of the biggest mistakes you see advisors making in assembling their tech stack? I think thematically, the biggest mistake, I think, is disconnect between the tools that we see advisors prioritize and their actual business goals. Like there's so many tools, some of them are very cool. It's a lot of them made it very easy to do a free trial and just try it. And I fully encourage folks to do that. Experimentation and exploration is good. But you really need to think about what are you trying to accomplish from a business standpoint? And for most of the advisors that we work with, it's preparing for succession. Like, I need this business to be able to run without me and be inheritable by somebody else that might be of a very different generation than me. There are a lot of advisors focused on growth. They're growth in a particular niche. So prospecting and tools that are relevant for that niche become the focus. There are a lot of advisors who are trying to move up market, as we just talked about. So I think that the biggest mistake I see is just that the tool selection is just disconnected from whatever the business goals of the practice are at that moment. And they're just sort of what's shiny and sexy rather than what's directly relevant. I think the other theme I see is, we talked about the layers of the tech stack, and many advisors and many bigger firms just really allow that client layer and that portfolio layer to be separate. And like, as we sort of talked about, it's connecting those two where a lot of the value lies. Like, that's where real personalization happens. Like, if you can connect a financial plan to a proposal that shops on a shelf of your reusable models, and it's all flows together, and you can click submit and it gets traded, and like, that is real unlock that is going to actually affect the client experience and the personalization of their advice to the experience. It's super hard. Like, it's not a surprise that a lot of people skip, like, sort of don't focus on that. But I would say finding the places between the client layer, which is usually the CRM, and the portfolio layer, which is usually the proposal and rebalancing, like, that's where a lot of the sort of untapped and unusual value is. Like, very few advisors have connected those.
So before we kind of, I guess, pivot back to Shannon for any final housekeeping, just wanted to give you an opportunity to, if there are any things that you really wanted to underscore, or just any particular takeaways you want to leave the audience with.
Okay. I think we are going to see a significant dispersion of advisors over the next 5 years based on their level of tech adoption. A lot of it will be AI, but I would say just tech in general. Like, AI won't displace advisors, but advisors who adopt AI will displace those who don't. So I think there's going to be a shakeout a bit, and it's happening in conjunction with so many advisors retiring and changing hands on the books, which will accelerate that process. And that, like, knowing that that's coming, I think puts a pretty big burden on advisors. Like, there's more tools today, that's more complex than it's ever been. There are higher prerequisites to adopt many tools. Like we talked through, you can't use most AI tools well unless you have a data estate in order. Getting a data estate in order is not easy. Integrations are getting harder, not easier. So I think every advisor needs a plan. And I think there are a small number of advisors who will do this themselves and will do it well. And the last speaker said that there's firms that should be hiring an engineer or a part-time solution architect. I fully agree with that, but I also think that the reality is that that's going to be more applicable to enterprise-sized firms more so than smaller independent advisors. It's just not realistic. So I think every advisor needs a plan, which is either do it themselves or like hitching to a horse that in this race. If you're a banker, that's your bank, and if you're an IBD advisor, you have the option of using your broker-dealer platform. But if you are an independent advisor and you are interested in a better horse, you should talk to us. That's our position in the market, and we're super focused on the independent BD NRA advisors, the small ones, and we framed that there's a battle for higher net worth clients against the private banks. Like, I think that's a little bit of a David and Goliath fight right now, and our mission in life is to even that playing field. So I joined in February. We've been massively investing in our technology team. We have over 400 people on the technology team now, really trying to push this platform forward and help as many advisors as we can.
And if folks want more information or to reach the firm or you, where should they go?
You can go to assetmark.com, or welcome you to contact me directly at alex.pape@assetmark.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much for answering my questions.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I think we'll just hand it over to Shannon to finish this off.
All right. Well, as the resident horse girl over here at wealthmanagement.com, I certainly loved the the horse analogy to wrap things up. But in all seriousness, thank you, gentlemen, for rounding out our final Growth Tech Summit of the year. Just want to express our deepest gratitude to our incredible panelists and sponsors today of Wealth.com and Practify, Cirrus Insight, DocuPace, and AssetMark. Really dynamic and fun discussions today. Hopefully, you're all walking away with a ton of practical takeaways, and your engagement and insights have really made this event a resounding success. Just a few closing reminders. Again, this entire summit has been recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing, and you can access it using the same URL used today. Again, just around CE credit, we have detailed submission instructions in that resource list widget if you are looking for those CE credits. And upon exiting this event, a short survey will appear in your browser, and we just value the audience feedback as it does help us tailor future events to your interests and needs. So again, thank you to everyone for being part of this summit. We'll certainly be back with more Growth Tech Summits in 2026, and we look forward to your continued participation in future events. On behalf of wealthmanagement.com, thank you all for tuning in and have a great rest of your day.